Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another Bible study. If you're new here, if this is your first time stumbling across one of my Bible studies, I highly suggest that you start at the top. Go back to the beginning of the playlist, watch the introduction. You may not be happy here otherwise. We're going to pick back up into Genesis 32. We left off in Genesis 31, where Jacob narrowly avoids being killed by his father-in-law. And now he is going to meet his brother, who has very valid reasons for wanting him dead. And so we're going to look at this and see what it says. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God," so he named that place Mahanaim. Now, if you are unaware, if you haven't watched the rest of the playlist, if you don't know what's going on, the angels of God are visibly different. They can appear humanoid, but they have a different form. They are visibly different than humans. The physical manifestation can't really pass off as human. They are recognizable. And so he recognizes them even from a distance. From a distance, they seem to glow almost. And some people can seem to see it better than others. And so he named that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, in the country of Edom. And he instructed them, "You are to say to my master Esau, your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, men servants, and maidservants. I have sent this message to inform my master so that I may find favor in your sight." All right, we're going to look at Google Earth real quick, just because I want to show the regions and the areas that we're talking about. Right. So when we first started out, we came from this area over here in Iraq, right? And we crossed the desert with Abram. He was fleeing from his father's lands over here. So he fled across over here, and then he went down through the land of the Canaanites, down into here, and this is where Abram was dwelling, and he wound up being buried here in Israel, right? Just a little bit to the west of the Dead Sea. But his descendants through Isaac are here in the Arabian Peninsula. They are the predecessors of all of these peoples. Everything that's in brown right here is Abraham's descendants. That's Isaac. Isaac has Jacob and Esau. And so Isaac's living down here, and he sends Jacob up here to get his bride into the lands of where Laban lives, which is his mother's father's lands. And so he goes up there to find a cousin to marry in this area. Well, Esau, in the meantime, goes off in this direction to find someone from his other cousins. Laban let's zoom in a little bit. This is Israel. This is Syria, Lebanon. And so Laban is up here just in the north of Syria, almost into Turkey. And he pursues Jacob all the way in, and they meet up. The river is right here, just north. Let me see. I might be able to do this real quick. Right here. No, it's not showing it. The river Jabbok, right here, Zarok. This is where it's supposed to be that they met up. He caught up with him just before he crosses this river. Or maybe that's where he meets his brother. Okay, so he meets up Laban catches up with him up here, just north of the Sea of Galilee here in Gilead. And then he crosses down and he comes to this river here, which is the Zarok River or Jabbok. And his brother Esau is over here in the region of Jordan and Ammon. I see you. Sorry, that's my dog. He's in the region of Jordan and Ammon. And whenever he gets to the Zarok River right here, this is where he sends off to his brother. And his brother crosses the desert to meet him as he comes across the Reunite. And now let's jump back into where, like, now that we know where we're at geographically, right? And so Jacob sends messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir in the country of Edom, which is Ammon into Jordan. And he instructed them, "You are to say to my master Esau, your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, men servants, and maidservants. I have sent this message to inform my master that I may find favor in your sight." Now, I want to point out something that does not often get pointed out, that these men servants and maid servants could possibly have been voluntary, but quite probably were not. They were more than likely slaves. Just so that is out there for anybody who might need to pick that up. And that goes back to Laban, and that goes back to Abram, and all the way back through there. When it's talking about the men servants and the maid servants, that's most likely not paid servants for the most part. Now, I'm not saying that it is definitely, but generally speaking, the history of the world is slavery, and paying wages is not a normal thing. Okay. And so I have sent this message to inform my master so that I may find favor in your sight. And when the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he's coming to meet you, he and 400 men with him." And in great fear and distress, Jacob divided his people into 2 camps, as well as the flocks and herds and camels. And he thought, if Esau comes and attacks one camp, the other camp can escape. Now, we're at the river, right? Where's it? It's right here. This is a rock river. We don't know precisely where, but it does say that he crosses this river. So it's somewhere between this point and this point. And so he divides into 2 camps, probably one on each side of this waterway, so that if one is attacked, the other one can get away, because it's difficult to get men in arms across water. And he stays on one side, he sends everybody else on the other side, because he's honorable like that, and he doesn't have a reason for fear and distress. It's not like he actually, cheated his brother out of his birthright by, taking advantage of him when he was starving to death and desperate. Like, that's not a thing. That didn't happen. And okay. And so he has valid reason for the fear and distress. So he separates, and he's like, all right, which one will I stay in? He stays in this one. And so then Jacob declared, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, the Lord who told me, go back to your country and your kindred, I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant." Okay? And I'm not disagreeing, but it's interesting that he acknowledges that here, because he has just been saved from his father-in-law, who had apparently justification for taking his life. Right? He has already fled from his brother, who apparently had justification for taking his life. And so now he's going into this fearful again, because he doesn't have faith in God in the way that he should, by being delivered twice already. And he says, "I'm unworthy of your kindness and faithfulness you have shown to your servant. Indeed, with only my staff I came across the Jordan. But now I have become 2 camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid that he may come and attack me and the mothers and children with me." Really? You really think he's going to kill all the women and children too? That's an interesting thing, because so far we haven't seen that as a common practice, right? Not that is recorded in this book. Why would you think that he's going to kill everybody associated with you? Because you stole his birthright. And so now you're fearful for that, and that's a valid fear, I guess. But then he bribes his way in, right? And he's like, well, then I'm just money. I'm going to throw the money at it and see what happens. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and I will make your offspring like the sands of the sea, numerous to count. And Jacob spent the night there, and from what he had brought with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels and their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. And he entrusted them to his servants in separate herds, and told them, go on ahead of me, keep some distance between the herds. So he's doing this to bribe his brother and win his good graces. It is an obvious attempt. There is no attempt at subterfuge in it. He instructs the one in the lead. When my brother Esau meets you and asks, to whom do you belong, and where are you going, and whose animals are these to you? You are to say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau. And behold, Jacob is behind us. Now, if he validly took the birthright, then he's not the servant. Right? He's coming into this as the guy who owns the place. He didn't validly take the birthright. Oh, and Jacob is behind us. And he also instructed the second, the third, and all of those following with behind the herds. When you meet Esau, you are to say the same thing. You are to say, look, your servant is Jacob is right behind us. For he thought, I will appease Esau with these gifts that are going before me. And after that I can face him, and perhaps he'll accept me. And so Jacob's gifts went on before him, while he spent the night in camp. Now during the night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. This is the river that we were just looking at. That's why we were here. And he took them and sent them across the stream with all of his possessions. So he was left all alone, and there a man wrestled with him until daybreak. And when the men saw that he could not overpower Jacob, he struck the socket of Jacob's hip and dislocated it as they wrestled. And then the man said to me, then they said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. What is your name? The man asked. Jacob, he replied. And then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed. And Jacob requests, what is your name? And he said, why do you ask? And then he blessed Jacob. And so Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, indeed, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life was spared. And the sun rose above him as he passed by Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. And therefore to this day the Israelites do not eat the tendon, which is at the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was struck near that tendon. Okay, we're going to unpack this whole wrestling situation right here. We're going to start right here at 22. During the night, Jacob gets up in the middle of the night, right? So maybe he's a little bit paranoid. He's kind of a shady guy, in my opinion. That appears to be a good characterization of him. He's been complicit in theft at the very least, but active in theft. He has possibly been duplicitous in his dealings with his father-in-law in taking the animals. And so we have a history of issues. So he wakes up in the middle of the night, and I'm going to assume that he's a little bit paranoid, that maybe he's going to be attacked. And he takes his wife and his wives, or his 2 wives and their 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, and crosses the ford and then sends them away. It says crosses the ford, and then he takes them and sends them across the stream. This is a contradiction in what's going on, because either he crossed the ford with them and then sent them on, or he sent them across the ford by themselves, because the ford is literally crossing the stream. And so he gave them everything he had and said, look, you go over there. Maybe he's thinking that this camp's going to be attacked, so he's going to save them, right? But he doesn't go back to his camp to die with his men, or to defend his property thinking he's going to be attacked, or any of that. He hides out. He camps out in the wilderness by himself. Maybe he was even trying to flee, and he fell down and he hurt his hip. And he told somebody that he was, wrestling. Maybe he fell down and hit his hip and it banged him on the head and he had an experience. Maybe God really did wrestle with him and almost lose. One of those is plausible. Now, I will never take away from the divine experience because I have had the divine experience. I have been visited by God, so I can tell you that it is an experience that you can have. I can't say whether or not that's what happened here, but the fact that he wrestled all night with God is an issue. And then we get into the word, right? And so let's pop up the word study on this. So Jacob was left all alone, and there a man wrestled with him. Let's pop that one open. All right, so this is to wrestle, to float away as a vapor. Okay, that's a little weird. Oh, there was another use of wrestle. Maybe it's this next one. Let's look real quick. Bam. Open this one up. See if that might even be the same word. From an unused word. Sit at the feet of. Float away. To be dust. To grapple or to wrestle. Okay, so this isn't the verse that I was thinking of. Maybe it was I thought it was this one. Anyway. Okay, so the common assumption is that this is him wrestling with God. And you're meant to get that from this because you have struggled with God and man and you have prevailed. But maybe the struggle with men was what he just did. Maybe he was struggling with men just now because he has been struggling with men and God. This is the one. This is the reference I was looking for, was the struggle here. This isn't wrestled but struggled. And it's to persist, exert oneself, and persevere. So you have struggled, persisted, and persevered with God and with men. And that is a whole different flavor to that context, right, than struggled with. To persist, exert, and persevere is not really struggle. It's contend, striven, wrestled, kinda. But really, it's persist, exert oneself, and persevere. To prevail. That's what it really means. And so you have prevailed. Right? And so, wait, here it is. The man wrestled until daybreak, and when he saw he could not overpower Jacob. That's the man, not the God. And the word here is actually the Elohim. I think I have that up right here, right? That's the C. That's not the one. I don't like this much slack time, but that's to say. Okay, well, we would have to do a much deeper word study, but it's a man, right? It's implied that it might be an angel, but it is definitely not God. But the struggle with God is the struggle of listening when you're told to move, to going when you're told to go, to following when you're told to follow. And so that could very well be what is referenced right here. And it would perfectly fit with what the situation is. And he's struggling with men is struggling with men. He has struggled with Laban. He is struggling with his brother. He has just struggled with a man until daybreak. And then there was a wrestle. And now, and then he persists. Like this was saying that he wrestled, and this is implying that this is the same as the wrestled. But the word here is for wrestling, and the word here is for persisting. And it gives a different context to it, to me at least, in reading this, is that maybe, and this is speculation, right? Based off of what's right here, just this one section that is visible right now, is okay, so he takes his wives and his children and sends them over here, and then he's intending to book out. He's like, you take all the stuff, y'all go this way. They've already been involved in plots, and he's going to book out this way, and then he runs across somebody, and then somebody won't let him go. And maybe that's what happened. And now, when the name gets changed to Israel, that means he struggles with God. And If this is an amalgamation, right, then at some point then the name had to have changed because it is expected to change from all of the stories. And this is the point where they expect it to change is when the wrestling happens. Uh, Penuel is a variant of Peniel, which means the face of God, right? Seeing the face of God could mean that you had a near-death experience. It happened to Paul on the road, and it happened to many people. Like it's happened to many people that you get near to death and you have a God experience. So maybe that's what happened. Maybe he fell and imagined that he wrestled. Maybe he slept and he dreamed that he wrestled. Maybe he actually wrestled with an angel. I do not believe that he actually wrestled with God himself. I do not believe that he actually saw the face of the unseeable. I don't. It may have been a representation, okay. It may have been something that he could wrap his mind around, okay, but it was not the literal face of God. And so we're going to leave that alone. And we're going to go ahead and do this because it's short. And this is him meeting back up with Esau. You can wait just a minute. And now when Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming toward him with 400 men, he's already sent his bribes. This is the morning after he wrestles with God. He's scared to death. That's why I think that he was trying to flee. I think he was scared to death. And either he ran into a guard and couldn't get past the guard. And that's a little bit not reasonable, seeing as how that would be his guards, right? Or he just said that he was trying to get away and slipped and fell and hurt his hip, and he said that he wrestled with God. That seems like a plausible thing that fits into character with Jacob. Another interesting note here in Genesis 33 is that now Jacob looked up and saw Esau, not Israel. When the God changes your name, from that point forward, your name is that. His name is no longer Jacob. His name is Israel. Oh. Not supposed to notice that. You're not supposed to point that out. But that's what just happened right here. Right? This is after the experience where his name was changed. From that point forward, he's like, hey, nope, my name's not Jacob anymore. I'm Israel. Didn't happen. It happened with Abram. Abram was like, I am no longer Abram. My name is Abraham. This is no longer Sarai. This is Sarah. Right? We don't have that here. And Jacob saw Esau coming with all of his people, and he's scared to death. So he divided the children among the women. Now he's already put the women over here. Now he's like, oh, take half of them. And he puts the maidservants with their children in the front. And Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph at the rear. But Jacob himself went on ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. 7 is important for various other reasons that we're not going to get into. Esau, however, ran to him and embraced him and threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they both wept. And Esau looked up and saw the women and children and said, who is this with you? And Jacob answered, these are the children God has graciously given your servant. And then the maidservants and their children approached and bowed down. Leah and her children also approached and bowed down. And then Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed down. What do you mean by sending this whole company to meet me, to find favor in your sight, my lord? I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what belongs to you. But Jacob insisted, no, please, I have found favor in your sight. Then receive this gift from my hand. For indeed I have seen your face, and it is like seeing the face of God. Since you have received me favorably, please accept my gift because that was brought to you. Because God has been gracious to me, and I have all that I need. And so Jacob pressed him until he accepted. And then Esau said, let us be on our way, and I will go ahead of you. And Jacob replied, my Lord knows that the children are frail, and I must care for the sheep and cattle that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard for even a day, all of the animals will die. Please, let my Lord go ahead of his servant, and I will continue on slowly at a comfortable pace for the children and livestock, until I come to my Lord at Seir. Let me leave some of my people with you, Esau said. Why do that? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir, but Jacob went on to Succoth, where he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock, and that is why the place was called Succoth, which means booths, shelters, or tabernacles. That will come in important later at another point. Sukkot is one of the Jewish high holidays. And Jacob, after Jacob had come from Padan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in the land of Canaan, and he camped just outside of the city. And the plot of ground where he pitched his tent and purchased from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of silver, and there he set up an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. All right, which means God is the God of Israel, or mighty is the God of Israel. Okay, so this last section right here. This is reminiscent or prescient of the prodigal son, right? The return of the prodigal son. He runs down the thing. Oh, welcome home. I love you. No mention at all of the stolen birthright. That does not track with an actual stolen birthright, right? Like if you come back, even if you've given me all of this stuff, you tricked me out of my inheritance of the lands. I don't buy it. That doesn't mean that it's not true. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't track. It doesn't fit with the character of God to bless these people. That's my major problem with most of this, is the fact that we accept it, right? We go off of the basic assumption that because the later redemption story that we are predisposed to believe, or the chosen people narrative that we are predisposed to believe, makes us say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and look around this, and we will justify this, and we will make these exceptions for these contradictions that are so glaringly obvious, that we don't diligently pay attention to what we're doing. And I was just as guilty of it as anyone else. Like, I'm finding all kinds of stuff that I didn't realize in here. Like, I am definitely in a different place in Genesis than I was when I started in Genesis, right? And so it is what it is. I hope I'm not bringing too much confusion, but it is a complicated topic, because the grand deception is that we have been sold this. The grand deception is that you've been told that there is a requirement ever was placed on you. Like, yes, you have a sin nature. Yes, you want to sin. Yes, that is what you are predisposed to do. But that is because it is your job here on this planet to strive against that, to find God and strive for Him, to ask Him for forgiveness and turn your face to His ways, and to do what He tells you to do. Like, that is literally why we're here. We're here for our experiences, both good and bad. We agreed to them before we got here, both good and bad. And they grow us into what we need to be to achieve our purpose there. And so what we need to do is to be diligent in what we're doing, and to pay attention to where the roots of what we believe are. Because for me, there was never any question that we should just blindly listen to Abraham. He was the patriarch. He was the virtuous, righteous patriarch of everybody's religion. And then I read the book, and I'm like, man, this dude is not great. But he sure got blessed. And then his son, not great. Gets blessed. His grandson, not great. And not just not great, but like actively against the things that we are told to hold in covenant. That's not the nature of the God I know, right? Now, granted, my opinion is that Genesis is an amalgamation of a lot of different stories, that they all get put together and codified by Moses at a much later date in order to give the Israelite people who have just fled Egypt something to cling to other than their idols. But there are people who hold that this is the infallible, divinely written Word of God. Well, I will grant you that divinely inspired, yeah, but the men are going to put their spin on it. And over the years, there has been many spins put on this book. There have been edits made. There have been changes made. There have been intentional mistranslations all through the history of this. And so we have to go back and look at it objectively. And if it brings us to divinity, okay. I absolutely believe in God Almighty Himself. I believe that His message goes through this book despite the best efforts of men. And so I'm trying to show that. I'm trying to show that He says in here the only thing you need to do is to love Him, to repent to him and to seek his face. That there was never a sacrifice required, and so there was never a human sacrifice required. But because man demanded a sacrifice, then the sacrifice of the human was needed, even though it was never necessary. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. You're perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pittstake. Peace.